October 1997. Eleanor Briggs, a 62-year-old nature photographer, vanished without a trace in Yosemite National Park. Her last known recording, captured on a handheld cassette device, was just 6 seconds long. A whisper, almost drowned by wind. Something's wrong. This trail shouldn't be here. Then silence. Eleanor wasn't a tourist. She had spent decades photographing remote wilderness areas, often alone. Her work had been featured in national magazines, and she was known for her obsession with forgotten trails and historical maps. She knew Yosemite's terrain intimately, especially the northern ridges near Porcupine Flat, where she had parked her car that morning. Her plan was simple: a 2-day hike, a few landscape shots, and back by Sunday. But she never returned. Search teams found her car untouched. Inside, a folded map, not a modern one, but a reproduction of an 1890s survey chart. It showed trails long since erased by time, and one in particular was marked in red ink: Echo Trail. That trail doesn't exist on any official Yosemite documentation. The search lasted 12 days. Dogs lost her scent within hours. Helicopters scanned the area. No gear, no clothing, no signs of struggle. Just one strange clue: her voice recorder, carefully placed inside a hollow tree, still running. After the final whisper, it recorded 3 hours of ambient sound. No footsteps, no wildlife, just a low, rhythmic hum, like distant machinery, pulsing beneath the forest. The hum was analyzed by audio technicians. It didn't match any known natural or mechanical source. It was too consistent, too deliberate. Some described it as electrical, others as organic, but no one could explain why it was there, or why it stopped so abruptly. 2 weeks later, a camper named Miguel Alvarez reported seeing a woman matching Eleanor's description near Tenaya Lake, barefoot, wearing an old ranger's coat, staring into the water. He called out. She turned, but her face looked wrong, pale, expressionless. Then she walked into the mist and disappeared. The problem? Tenaya Lake is nearly 20 kilometers from where Eleanor vanished. The terrain between is brutal: steep granite walls, dense forest, and no direct trail. No one could have crossed it unnoticed, especially not in that condition. Eleanor's daughter, Julia, began her own investigation. She discovered her mother had been obsessed with a series of ranger journals from the early 1900s. One entry, DATE 1901, described a fold in the valley, a place where compasses failed and time felt distorted. The ranger wrote, "I walked for hours and returned to the same tree. I think I crossed into something else." Julia brought the map to a professor of Native American symbology. He identified a small marking near the Echo Trail, a symbol used by the northern Miwok tribe to represent passage, not death, not danger, passage. The professor explained that the symbol was rarely used in Yosemite, but it appeared in oral traditions, stories of places where the forest opened and people were never seen again. These stories weren't warnings, they were invitations. The tribe believed certain places allowed the spirit to move between worlds. Not metaphorically, literally. In 1998, a ranger found a stone circle deep in the woods, far off any trail. In the center was Eleanor's camera. The film was mostly ruined, but one frame survived: a tree with a face-like pattern in its bark, and behind it, a trail that doesn't exist. The tree was later identified as a sugar pine, but the bark pattern was unlike anything seen before. It resembled a human face, not carved, not painted, but naturally formed. Botanists couldn't explain it. The trail behind it led into a dense thicket that, according to satellite imagery, didn't exist. No path, no clearing, just forest. Eleanor's body was never found. Her case remains open, but every October, Julia returns to Yosemite. She hikes to the edge of Echo Trail, or where she believes it begins, and waits. She says the forest feels different there, still, listening. "I don't think she's gone," Julia says. "I think she found something. And maybe she's still watching." In 2003, a retired FBI profiler named Daniel Kessler reviewed the case unofficially. He had worked on missing persons for over 30 years and specialized in wilderness disappearances. His conclusion was unsettling. "Hold on a second," he said during a recorded interview. "There seems to be a misunderstanding here. What if Eleanor wasn't lost at all?" Kessler believed Eleanor had been searching for something, not just a photograph, but a place. He pointed to her research, her maps, her journals. She had been tracing a pattern of disappearances dating back to the 1800s, all in Yosemite, all near Echo Trail. He found a correlation between Eleanor's map and a series of geological anomalies, magnetic disturbances, compass failures, even time discrepancies reported by hikers. One man claimed he had walked for 20 minutes, but his watch showed 3 hours. Another said he saw the moon rise twice in one night. Kessler believed Eleanor had found a threshold, a place where reality thinned. He didn't call it supernatural. He called it unclassified, a region where physics behaved unpredictably, where perception broke down. In 2007, a group of amateur researchers retraced Eleanor's route. They found nothing unusual until one of them, a geologist named Rachel Lynn, reported a sudden drop in temperature. Her GPS froze, her compass spun, and for 5 minutes she couldn't hear her own footsteps. She described the experience as being watched by something that wasn't there. She left the forest the next day and never returned. The National Park Service does not officially recognize Echo Trail. It does not appear on any map, and no ranger will confirm its existence. But hikers continue to report strange phenomena in the area. Sounds without sources, lights in the trees, and the feeling of being followed. Some say Eleanor walked into a place that doesn't appear on maps. Others believe she was chasing something ancient, something hidden. But one thing is certain: Yosemite keeps its secrets, and Eleanor's story is only the beginning. In October of 1978, a group of 6 amateur cave explorers from Flagstaff, Arizona, disappeared during a weekend trip to the Grand Canyon. They were experienced hikers, familiar with the terrain, and had planned a descent into a lesser-known cave system near the North Rim, a place locals called the Whispering Caverns. The name wasn't on any official map. It came from stories passed down by river guides and old miners, tales of strange acoustics, sudden temperature drops, and voices that echoed without a source. The group was led by 43-year-old Thomas Greer, a retired geology teacher with a fascination for uncharted cave systems. He had spent years collecting rumors, old mining records, and tribal accounts of hidden chambers beneath the canyon walls. He believed the Whispering Caverns were real, and that they held something ancient. They left on a Friday morning. By Sunday evening, when they hadn't returned, a park ranger named Evelyn Cross went looking. She found their van parked near a service road, locked, with gear missing. A note was taped to the dashboard: "Gone to caverns, back by dusk." They never came back. The search began Monday. Helicopters scanned the cliffs. Rangers rappelled into ravines. But the terrain was unforgiving, jagged, layered, and vast. After 3 days, they found a trail of climbing gear leading down into a narrow crevice. At the bottom was a small cave entrance, partially hidden by brush. Inside, they found signs of passage, boot prints, chalk markings, and a coil of rope. But the cave went deeper than expected, much deeper. The team descended cautiously. The air grew colder. The walls narrowed, and then the markings stopped. No signs of struggle, no blood, no gear, just silence. One ranger described the cave as wrong, not dangerous, just off. The acoustics were strange. Sounds didn't echo properly. Light behaved oddly, and the deeper they went, the more they felt watched. They turned back. The official report listed the group as presumed lost due to cave collapse or misadventure. But Evelyn Cross didn't agree. She had found something else, a small notebook wedged between rocks near the entrance. It belonged to Thomas Greer. The last entry read, "We heard it again. The voice. It's not echoing. It's speaking." The handwriting was erratic. The lines slanted. The ink smudged. Evelyn kept the notebook. She didn't tell her superiors. She didn't know why. Maybe she didn't want it dismissed. Maybe she didn't want it buried. Years passed. The case faded. But the story lingered. In 1994, a solo hiker named Daniel Price reported hearing voices near the same area. He said they were faint, like whispers carried on wind, but there was no wind. He followed the sound to a crevice, saw the cave entrance, and turned back. "I felt like I was being invited," he said, "but not by something human." In 2002, a documentary crew filming in the canyon picked up strange audio on their equipment. A low hum, rhythmic, almost like breathing. They dismissed it as interference, until one of the crew members, reviewing the footage alone, heard something else. A voice, faint, repeating a phrase. "We are beneath." He quit the project the next day. In 2010, Evelyn Cross, now retired, shared her story with a journalist. She revealed the notebook, the cave, and her belief that the group hadn't died. Not in the traditional sense. "I think they went somewhere," she said. Not down, not deeper. Somewhere else. She described dreams she'd had over the years, of standing in a vast chamber, lit by no source, surrounded by figures that didn't move. She said she always woke with the same feeling, that someone had been trying to speak to her. The journalist published the story. It gained attention. Paranormal investigators, geologists, and conspiracy theorists all weighed in. Some believed the cave was a natural acoustic anomaly. Others thought it was a portal, not to another world, but to another layer of this one. One theory stood out. A physicist named Dr. Lena Moravec proposed that the cave structure could create a sensory inversion zone, a place where sound, light, and perception distort due to mineral composition and magnetic fields. She didn't claim it explained the disappearance, but she didn't rule it out. She visited the site in 2013. Her team mapped the cave, measured the acoustics, and recorded hours of audio. Most of it was normal, but one segment, recorded at 2:17 a.m., contained a whisper, not wind, not echo, a voice. "We are beneath." Same phrase, same cadence. Dr. Moravec left the project shortly after. She never published her findings. Today, the cave is sealed. Not officially, but by nature. Rockfalls have blocked the entrance. Rangers discourage exploration. The area is marked as unstable, but hikers still report strange things. Voices, lights, the feeling of being watched. And sometimes, they say, if you stand quietly near the crevice at dusk, you can hear it, breathing. The Grand Canyon is vast, beautiful, brutal. It holds layers of time, memory, and silence. But beneath its surface, in places not marked on maps, something else may linger. Something that doesn't echo. Something that waits. Three longtime friends, Daniel, Mark, and Susan, all in their early 50s, had planned the trip for weeks. They wanted to escape the noise of Los Angeles, reconnect with nature, and revisit a place they'd loved in their youth, Joshua Tree National Park. The desert had always held a strange kind of peace for them. Wide skies, ancient rocks, silence that felt sacred. They arrived early on a Sunday morning, just after 9 a.m., and parked near the Hidden Valley trailhead. The sun was already climbing, casting long shadows across the sand. They unpacked folding chairs, a cooler, and a small picnic table. Daniel, always the photographer, brought his camera, a vintage Nikon he refused to replace. The morning passed quietly. They talked about old times, shared sandwiches, and watched the occasional hiker pass by. At 11:42 a.m., Daniel stood up and said he wanted to take a short walk to photograph a rock formation he'd seen years ago. He pointed toward a ridge about 300 meters away. He left his phone on the table, took only his camera, promised he'd be back in 20 minutes. He never returned. At first, Mark and Susan were worried. Daniel was known for wandering off, getting lost in his thoughts, chasing the perfect shot. But after an hour passed, they began to search. They followed the path he'd taken, calling his name, scanning the horizon. Nothing. No footprints. No camera. No sign of struggle. By 3 p.m., they contacted park rangers. A search was launched immediately. Helicopters flew overhead. Dogs were brought in. Volunteers combed the area. But Daniel had vanished. Here's where it gets strange. The terrain Daniel walked into was flat. No cliffs, no caves, no water sources. No reason to get lost. The weather was clear. Visibility excellent. And yet, the official report listed him as missing, presumed disoriented. But Daniel wasn't the first. Over the past 30 years, at least 14 people have gone missing in the Joshua Tree region under similar circumstances. Most were experienced hikers. Most disappeared within a few hundred meters of a trail. Few were ever found. One case from 1998 involved a woman named Teresa, who vanished while painting a landscape near Cap Rock. Her easel was found. Her car was untouched. Her last recorded words, left on a handheld cassette recorder, were chilling. "I feel like something's watching me. Not an animal, something else. I don't know how to explain it." The tape ended abruptly. In Daniel's case, investigators found something odd. A map in his car, hand-drawn. It showed a route not marked on any official trail. A dotted line leading to a place labeled only as The Echo. No one knew what it meant. Susan later recalled that Daniel had mentioned The Echo once before. He'd said it was a place he'd stumbled upon years ago, where sound behaved strangely, bouncing back in whispers even when he hadn't spoken. He laughed it off at the time. But now, it felt different. 6 months passed. Then, in late October, a solo hiker named Miguel found Daniel's camera wedged between two boulders near an unmarked wash. The memory card was intact. There were 12 photos. The first 11 were typical desert shots: rocks, sky, shadows. The last photo was different. It showed a figure. Tall, blurry, standing in the distance. Not human. Not animal. Just there. Authorities dismissed it as lens flare. But Mark and Susan disagreed. They said Daniel had once told them about a strange experience he'd had in the same area years before. A sound like a low hum that made him feel dizzy. He never spoke of it again. The camera was sent for analysis. No tampering, no signs of damage. The photo was real, but the figure remained unidentified. Then came the twist. A retired ranger named Harold, who had worked in Joshua Tree for over 25 years, contacted Susan privately. He said he'd seen something similar, not once, but twice. Both times, it was during search operations for missing persons. He described a sensation of being watched, followed by sudden silence. No birds. No wind, just stillness. He also mentioned a symbol. A spiral carved into a rock near an old trail, long since closed to the public. He said it wasn't natural, and it wasn't Navajo or Cahuilla. It was something else, something older. Susan and Mark returned to the park with Harold. They found the rock. The spiral was still there, faint but unmistakable. Nearby, they discovered a small pile of stones arranged in a circle, with one stone missing. Harold said he'd seen that formation before, always near missing persons cases, always with one stone removed. So what really happened? Was it disorientation, heat stroke, or something else? Something older than the park itself. Something that watches, waits, and chooses? The case remains open. No body, no answers, just a camera, a map, a photo, and a symbol carved into stone. And maybe Daniel wasn't lost at all. Maybe he found something, or was found. A couple, Michael and Laura, had planned a quiet weekend road trip through Southern California. Joshua Tree National Park was meant to be a brief stop, a picnic, a short hike, a few photos. Then back on the road toward Palm Springs. They arrived late in the afternoon, just as the desert light began to soften. The air was still, the silence almost too perfect. They parked near the Stub Spring Loop, a 13-mile trail known for its remote beauty and difficult terrain. Michael, always drawn to solitude, suggested they walk a short stretch before sunset. Laura stayed behind at the car, organizing their gear. Michael walked off with his camera and a small backpack. He said he'd be back in an hour. He never returned. Laura waited until dusk. Then she began to search. She called his name, walked the trail. Nothing. No footprints. No camera. No sign of struggle. By nightfall, she contacted park rangers. A search was launched immediately. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers. But Michael had vanished. The terrain was open. Visibility excellent. No cliffs, no water hazards, no reason to get lost. The official report listed him as missing, presumed disoriented. But something didn't feel right. 2 days later, hikers discovered skeletal remains near the same trail, bones scattered across the sand. Forensic specialists were called in. The remains were sent to the Riverside County Coroner's Office. They suspected the body might be Michael's, but DNA tests were still pending. The strange part? The bones were found in a spot that had already been searched. Thoroughly. Twice. Park officials were puzzled. One ranger, who asked not to be named, said he'd walked that exact area the day before and saw nothing. No bones. No disturbance. Just desert. Then came the twist. A second body was found, partially buried, near Bighorn Pass Road, just a few miles from the first site. This one was different. It wasn't skeletal. It was fresh, and it had been buried deliberately. Scavengers had begun to dig at the lower half. Coyotes, vultures. The desert doesn't wait. Authorities shut down the area. The case was handed over to Riverside's Central Homicide Unit. They believed the second death was not accidental. But what about Michael? Laura was devastated. She said Michael had no enemies, no history of mental illness, no reason to disappear. She also mentioned something odd, a sound he'd described once before. A low hum, like something vibrating beneath the rocks. He'd heard it on a previous visit to Joshua Tree, years earlier. He'd laughed it off. But now, she wondered, the desert has a history. In the early 1900s, it was a lawless place. Miners fought and killed over claims. In the 1960s, Charles Manson and his followers roamed nearby Death Valley. And in the 1970s, the body of musician Graham Parsons was burned in Joshua Tree by his friends in a bizarre, unauthorized cremation. Death seems drawn to this place, and not all of it is natural. In 2014, a young woman was strangled by her lover and dumped at the bottom of an abandoned mine shaft just outside the park. In another case, a couple was found dead beneath a Joshua tree, locked in a final embrace. It was later ruled a murder-suicide. But Michael's case was different. He wasn't buried. He wasn't hidden. He was simply gone. Until he wasn't. The remains were confirmed to be his. But the cause of death? Inconclusive. No trauma, no signs of dehydration, no broken bones. Just bones. Lavra returned to the park 6 months later. She walked the same trail, sat near the spot where his remains were found. She said she felt something, a pressure in the air, a silence that wasn't peaceful, a stillness that felt wrong. She found a small pile of stones arranged in a spiral. She hadn't seen it before. She took a photo, but when she looked at it later, the spiral was gone. Just sand and a shadow that hadn't been there in person. So what really happened? Was Michael lost? Taken? Or did he step into something ancient, something that doesn't follow our rules? The case remains closed, but the questions remain. No answers. Just bones, a photo, and a silence that still echoes. And maybe, just maybe, Michael wasn't the first. And he won't be the last.